Yeah, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go.
He's out and about before most of us have had our morning coffee. On this particular November morning, handing out reflectors to students at the College of New Caledonia. It's how Mayor Lyn Hall likes to start every day, early. Please join us for the next hour as we follow the mayor to some well-known events around town and talk about the issues facing the city's top civic official.
Good morning. We're giving out reflectors this morning for your backpack when you're walking in the evening. You're welcome. I think the other thing too, Cheryl, is that council is all over the community, and it's important for us to be out at things like this. It just gives us an idea. It does a couple things. It allows us to have an opportunity to talk to folks, and it gives them an opportunity to talk to us about things, and they'll take advantage of that, and that's good. Got a couple of reflectors for your backpack. They light up at night, so you're more visible. Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you figure that mostly people know who you are?
I think many of them do. It's interesting, the international students, because we spend so much time at events with international students from CNC and UNBC, they certainly will recognize me. Yeah, and they have asked me on a number of occasions and other counselors to come and speak to various classes about municipal governance and politics within a municipality, because it's quite different from other countries that they've come from. Got some reflectors for your backpack if you have one. Just they light up at night, so you're more visible. Thank you. So here at CNC, because it's primarily students, lots of comments about bike lanes, lots of comments about what we're doing with transportation, particularly, obviously around transit.
On a personal note, now you've been in civic politics for a lot of years, if you go back to your days on school board. What motivates somebody to get into civic politics?
For me it was, and I know again, an overused term perhaps, but it was about the commitment I had to the city and me just wanting to serve. The city itself has been so good to me, so good to my wife and I and our girls, and I have a large family here in Prince George, and I've been coming here since I was a very young kid, and I just really had a strong connection to the city even before I moved here. And it was just about my involvement. I spent time on the Child Development Center board, spent a lot of time, as you know, at the soccer field and coaching and participating with PGYSA and Ringette and other sporting venues. I just absolutely love it here, and I just wanted to be able to give back.
What made you decide to forego the councillor moniker and take a run at the mayor's chair? Was there a single issue? I know that in past cases there's been one single issue that has prompted somebody to say, well, as the mayor I can effect more change. What made you decide to go for mayor?
Well, I guess for me it was again one of those decisions. I'd spent 3 years on council. I felt I had a certain style of leadership that I wanted to see. I wanted to bring that to the table, that style of leadership that I have, and I just had a real keen desire to see, I think, just more happen within the community, and I really wanted to be able to have the opportunity to work as the mayor along with a strong council to deliver on development, to deliver on those social issues that we have in the community. And I thought, well, now's the opportunity.
We were at the college this morning handing out reflectors, lots of young students there. Given the affordability of this community, how does the city of Prince George work with the likes of the college, with the university, to keep those young students here? They may come from, in many cases, in CNC's case, there are a lot of international students. How do we keep them here?
I think it's, and we do have a great partnership with CNC and UNBC, and I think what it is obviously around, we're always talking about recruitment and retention. And I think if you're a student coming in from India or China, wherever it might be, it's our responsibility, and with that partnership with the college and university, to show the opportunity that's here. And so whatever you graduate in, we need to be able to say, you have an opportunity to get employment here in Prince George. You have an opportunity to get into a more reasonable priced home. The lifestyle, if you love recreation, culture, and the arts, we have the entire package right here in Prince George. So that's the responsibility I see we have as a city in partnering with the two post-secondaries to make sure that we provide for those students that want to stay here. And many have. Many have chosen Prince George as their home.
When you first became mayor, you had two committees that you struck, and both of them unfortunately were dissolved. I talked to the councillor who headed up the education committee, and he figures that it's a good idea. I mean,
I'm going to bring those back. I'm going to bring them back in the new year. Right now, we're just looking at the terms of reference, and it may not be both education committees. It may be one, but I think the most important thing is if we can combine those terms of reference and have students and the senior team members from each of the institutions here, like CNC and UNBC, it'd be fantastic. Good morning. We're giving out reflectors today to put on your backpack or your coat so you're seen at night when you're walking. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Festival of Trees is happening, so there's that jingle mingle over at the Civic Center with the seniors, and then there's another event that's happening in town with the nativity scene. And so, you know what's interesting, Cheryl, is the number of things that go on in the community every day, 7 days a week, and almost 365 days a year. We get schedules of things that go on, and it's everything from the arts to sporting events to organizations that are having AGMs, large conferences. It really is impressive.
You're heading out to a seniors tea this afternoon. That's another demographic that the city is going to have to pay a lot of attention to addressing the needs of, because they are not going to the Okanagans of the world anymore. Affordable housing, that's probably one of the single largest issues that seniors have to face.
Absolutely. And in 2015, I met with a number of seniors groups and individuals, and they said point blank, we need choice. If we want to move out of our family home, we need to have choice. I guess we can't sit and have a piece of cake or anything, eh? We have to work.
Did you want a cookie? I could serve you.
Well, I had a chocolate chip cookie up at the church.
Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good, you?
Good, what do you got in there? Decaf?
I get decaf, yes.
Good.
Decaf?
No, I'm good. I'm working today.
Oh, you are? Okay.
We're here to help you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, this is a great time of year. I love Christmas. Coffee? I'll come around. Yeah, I love Christmas, and it's good.
Me too.
There's some pieces of cake there. I hope I get a break to eat.
You're welcome to join us.
Okay.
Especially if you can unscramble words, you're welcome.
I tried that last year and it didn't work. What about the Heart, for example? Because there's a real need for seniors housing, and I always use that as an example, Cheryl, but the real need for seniors housing in the Heart. So how can we help out with some type of an incentive? For me, it was really the development that took place within the city, and I saw a real change in the city. And we take a look at things like the Riverbend Seniors Project, and that was something that was talked about a great deal during the campaign of 2014 about providing seniors housing in the city. So that was really a highlight for me to be able to turn the sod on that project. You know, I've said to many of the seniors, if you go away for the winter, fantastic, but I want you to come home. I want you to continue to make Prince George your home, and if we're going to, you know, ask and say that, we need to be able to provide. So we have opportunities with many developers, and we're seeing it throughout the community, where they're providing smaller homes and paying particular attention to seniors so that they have a choice when they sell their family home.
And I must tell you, I've really been quite impressed with a lot of the stuff that's going on downtown.
Good.
It's really starting to look like a city instead
It's
of...
coming.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. It's been a lot of work.
Let's talk a little bit about the downtown. When did you start to see, when I first came here, 5 o'clock, 5:30, tumbleweeds rolling down
Absolutely.
3rd Avenue, it was dead.
Yeah.
And we've been talking, this community has been talking about revitalizing the downtown since the 80s.
Yeah.
When did you start to notice the change? Was it during your tenure as mayor, or was it prior to that?
No, I'd have to say it was when I came in as mayor in that 2015 period. of time where we drew a tremendous amount of people downtown from our community during the 2015 Canada Winter Games. But I saw young entrepreneurs step up and look at the downtown differently. And I think it was that different lens that people were looking at it from an investment perspective. Just a number of establishments that we needed to kickstart the downtown so that young people and others would come downtown and see it in a different light, that there was an entertainment opportunity here, both if you wanted to go out and you know, for a meal somewhere, if you wanted to go for some entertainment. So when we take a look at the core of the downtown, and I talked a little bit about the cask and talked a bit about Crossroads and then what's going on with the Twisted Cork and Black Clover and all of those. You know, it's an interesting mix of restaurants and small pubs that we never had before.
No.
They've really been proactive. So you take Crossroads and the group, they've got their street parties that they have a couple of times, 3 times a year. We've got summer festival, winter festival, just trying to utilize what's downtown and show people that there's more to it than there once was, and the changes that have taken place. And when we took a look at what was happening in the downtown area, we could see a change. It started to be more positive about what we could do with downtown, and we've seen that 4 years later, Cheryl. Certainly the Park House condo development in downtown was a real big project and an important project for us to really kickstart residential living downtown. But if you take a look at the entire city and what was happening with residential building, with the number of homes, the number of hotels, the private sector investment. So there was a tremendous amount of excitement for me in seeing that development over the 4 years.
What do you think was the drive behind that? What do you think motivated
Well, I think that it was just the attitude of the city and really the work that council did and the senior administration, our economic development office, in saying to the rest of the province and quite honestly across the country, we're absolutely here, open for business. I know it's an overused cliche, but we really were intent on getting the message out. And I think the 2015 Canada Winter Games played a huge role. It put us on the national stage. It showed the rest of the world and the rest of the country what exactly we could do as a city. And when you have that opportunity, you need to take advantage of it. And I said early on, after the games were completed, that we need to use this as a stepping stone. We also have to talk about the social needs that are down here. Yeah. And that's a big part of our redevelopment. So you've got homelessness issues, you've got drug addiction issues, and mental illness issues, but that's the flip side. So it's an interesting dichotomy between the two.
Yeah.
So there are still areas, you know, obviously, Cheryl, that I'd really like to see developed. So here we are in front of the Ramada.
Right.
Take a look across the street.
Yeah.
We've got a couple lots and one on the corner. These are all really have a lot of potential for development.
I would hazard that this was the council that really took downtown to task in terms of perhaps not just the downtown, but the city to task. Put everybody on notice that unsightly premises are not going to be tolerated any longer. Does that help?
Absolutely, it helps. It's like the broken window effect. If you have a location where the window is broken, continues, and nobody fixes it, and it stays that way for a long time, it perpetuates itself. So we took a look at the old laundromat, for example. There was a burnt out hulk of a building between Rick's Grill and Photofax. It had been there for years. 4x8 sheets of plywood that were covering it. And it caught on fire again. And I remember that Friday afternoon thinking, well, there's nothing back there. But in fact, there was that burnt out shell still there. The motel, for example, 2 motels along Victoria Street, a motel along Queensway. We wanted to send a message. We said all along that we need people to live downtown to drive the economy. If you live downtown, other services will come to the downtown to help provide for those residents, whether it be small grocery stores, small butcher shops, whatever it might be. And we're seeing that now. This is the development that we've been waiting for I think, decades. So what they're going to do now is they're starting, this is phase 1. And it was interesting, Cheryl, because every election that I'd been a part of or watched, the question about what are you going to do about downtown came up. Ironically, this last election in 2018, I didn't get that question once. What are you going to do about downtown?
We paid $460,000 to fix that Winnipeg Street sinkhole.
Yes,
Is this a preview of things to come?
it is. And I've talked about for a very long time infrastructure below and above ground. We've done assessments on our infrastructure. We've done facility assessments. We've done park assessments. We've really done a fantastic job, and I need to thank staff for the work they've done on those assessments. We know that much of our infrastructure in many parts of our city are 60, 70, 80 years old. We're over 100 years old, and there's impacts that come along with that. And I think the sinkhole was just indicative. So that particular location there is an important interchange for our below ground infrastructure, water and sewer. And we're going to see that throughout the community.
When you have staff do that assessment of all the city services, on below ground in particular, is there a dollar figure attached to that? Do we know what the bill is going to be at the end of the day?
We don't have exact dollars, and we can project, but I think there's a lot of flexibility in those projections, and a lot of that is as a result of what happens is you start digging, and it's like anything else. You start digging, you get down to what you think is the issue, and then all of a sudden that issue becomes a whole lot more than what you anticipated. And we see that. We saw that with the sinkhole. We saw that with some of the work that we've been doing along 7th Avenue in front of City Hall and Fire Hall 1. So you can go into it thinking it might be $200,000 or $250,000, but the more you dig and the more you look, it stands to reason that you just don't want to do half a job.
We've had unprecedented growth. I think it was discussed recently, $170 million worth of building permits this year. Is that sustainable? When do we hit the glass ceiling on that?
Well, I'm a pretty positive guy, and I would like to think we won't hit the ceiling. But I know that from an economy perspective, there's always highs and there's always lows. And we've been fortunate over the last 4 years to see record-setting building permits. We'll probably hit in excess of $500 million in the last 4 years, which is really has been unheard of. Year to date, as you say, we're $170 million in building permits for 2018. The experts talk about what things are happening, what's happening in BC, particularly northern BC. They don't see a fall off from the economic growth that we've seen, and I think given the resource sector and other things that are happening, we may be able to maintain this for a few years down the road. But like everything else, time will tell, and certainly I don't have a crystal ball to tell what's going to happen in 2019 or 20, but we're pretty confident.
I was recently talking with a member of the Home Builders Association of BC, Jody Tyndall, and she referred to, with Site C going great guns right now, LNG Canada with its announcement, we're in a bit of a perfect storm in terms of trades, labor, servicing,
right,
et cetera. There's pros and cons to that, though. What do you see as some of the pros and some of the cons?
Well, I guess I'll start with the cons. The cons are really around the impact it has on our social infrastructure, our health care infrastructure, and our policing infrastructure. As communities grow, there's more drain on those services, and people require those services. So that's a bit of a con. So we have to be very cognizant of that, to work with our partners, to work with the RCMP, to work with social service agencies, to work with Northern Health, to make sure that we're in a good position. The pros to it are it provides jobs. We're a resource sector community, and we don't forget about the fact that forestry is the mainstay and the foundation of what this community was built on. So when we talk about resource sector, we have an opportunity for our service industry to work, to get good paying jobs, provide their services to, whether it be LNG, to the mining sector, to the forest sector, to what's happening up around Fort St. John, obviously, and the dam. So there's a number of things that it really increases opportunity, it drives the economy for us, and it spurs on others to come to Prince George, find work, set up business. Not only that, but I would suggest too, School District 57, as you see more people come to the community, you're seeing more influx of young children who obviously are going to go to school. And we've seen that with the opening of Springwood Elementary, the reopening after being closed for a number of years. We're seeing a new Kelly Road Senior Secondary School. And in talking with folks from the school district, we're seeing an influx of students. And I couldn't be happier to see more students enrolled in our schools here in Prince George.
Typically what happens in a community like Kitimat, at the height of the LNG construction, they're anticipating they'll need as many as 10,000 construction workers.
Yeah.
The community of Kitimat is only 8,000 population. So you're going to see, I'm sure, a lot of displacement.
So if we're just talking about people relocating to Prince George, we're seeing within that building expanse properties being built like apartment buildings and condo development and residential housing, and I think it will meet that need. We've got investors that want to come to the community and provide multifamily construction. We have investors that want to take a look at Prince George, and that affordable housing piece is so important, and every community is fighting it, but I think we're in a pretty good position to be able to provide that to folks that are choosing to relocate here for whatever reason it is. There's still challenges. I mean, there's challenges around the trades. You talk about the number of people that they're going to require to work in and around Kitimat and the LNG industry. That's a bit of a catch-22 for us because we now, as you know, we have an apartment building that's going up, and it has a big sign on the entrance, "Trades Wanted." And we're going to see that. There's major projects going on in Prince George, and right now we have a concern about whether or not we can meet the demand with the trades folks that we have.
We have one of the lowest land prices, according to a recent survey, probably the 4th or 5th lowest land prices in the country. How long is that going to remain the best kept secret?
Good question. Again, it's sort of that crystal ball approach. How long? I'm not sure. When you take a look at what's happening with Vancouver and Metro Vancouver and on the island, investors and developers take a look at the entire province. So they move up to the Okanagan and they move into the Kamloops area and they start to look elsewhere. And we are a focal point. I talked to many of the realtors in the community, and we are now a focal point for investors and developers coming in. So the market will drive that. And as you know, the more interest you have in the community, the market will dictate whether or not prices increase. And I'm sure they will. We've seen prices increase on bare land. We've seen prices increased on residential and commercial. So it's just probably a matter of time.
What are going to be some of the challenges moving forward? We still don't have a softwood lumber agreement. That's been a long-standing issue. We have infrastructure, and we talked about that.
Yeah. The softwood lumber agreement is big. You know, when you take a look at things that impact not just Prince George, but nationally, the steel tariffs impact us, increase costs in any kind of private or public sector investment that takes place in Prince George. If you boil it down locally, I think the infrastructure piece is continue to talk about it, but it's big. Housing, seniors housing, is also something that we've done some catch up. We need to do more. We have aging facilities, not just below ground infrastructure, but we have aging facilities. You take a look behind us here with the rolling mixed concrete arena. We have facilities that are hard to believe, 25, 30 years old, that seems like just yesterday they were built. But the CN Center, the Aquatic Center, those facilities are now 25 and 30 years old and are requiring more upkeep, more renovation. So it's all about trying to provide the service in the community, it doesn't matter what the service is, and trying to keep the costs in line. Those are real challenges. And we know with our infrastructure, that, as you pointed out, the sinkhole on Massey, the cost of that, we know that that's going to be a challenge for this council, is how do we balance services, how do we take care of the infrastructure needs, how do we tap into the federal and provincial government opportunities to help us fund some of that infrastructure. The other thing that, and probably not really a challenge, but I think as a mid-sized city, not just BC mid-sized cities, Cheryl, but across the country, we need to have a stronger voice with the federal government. So the big cities, you know, the Vancouvers and the Calgarys and the Edmontons, they have a strong voice with the federal government, and I think that we need to develop that as well as as a mid-sized city. We have a great voice and always have had with the provincial government, but we need to strengthen it federally because there's opportunity there for them to assist us.
Is there an appetite then to maybe reach out on the part of our council to other similar sized cities, the Kamloutses and maybe the St. Catharines and the Londons and so on and so forth, to say, hey, we need to form some form of coalition to be the louder voice?
Yeah, and that's not so difficult to do. There's not, believe it or not, there's not a lot of cities of, say, 70 to 90,000 across the country. And I think it'd be some work, but I think it's an important piece for us. We need to have that coalition of voices across the country so that we don't get lost. And there's a coalition of voices of much smaller communities as well that need to have a voice. And it's just about taking that on with your provincial counterparts, with MPs across the country, with MLAs to try to strengthen the voice. But I think it's very doable, and for me, it's something that needs to be done.
The last 2 years of your first term, unprecedented wildfire seasons. Unprecedented. And we've seen mills in the region as a result of fiber supply issues kind of scale back. Are you concerned at all about, I mean, forestry, it may have been in the past the lifeblood of this community. Maybe things have diversified. Are you worried at all about the forestry sector?
Yeah, I am. I'm worried about the allowable cut. I'm worried about what may take place. For example, the chief forester of the province taking a look at what impact these wildfires have had. Tens of thousands of acres have been destroyed. So two things. What does it mean to the allowable cut for the number of not just you know, the large mills of the world, but the smaller mills that operate throughout our region? But what about the timber that's still there that was burnt? Is that salvageable, and can we get at it quick enough? Is there a market for it? I'm hearing that there is a market for it. I'm hearing that there is a timeline that they need to get in there and get that harvested so that they can get it to market. So yeah, it is a real issue, and as I said, I'm concerned about it, and we'll see, I think, within the next 8 or 10 months what comes out from the Chief Forester's office around any changes to the allowable cut. We know it's reviewed on an annual basis, but what has the wildfire impact been on that particular cut? So we'll see.
Speaking of wildfires, Mr. Abbott had his report out after the 2017 wildfires, and it specifically said, much of it was geared toward the caribou, but it specifically talked about the need to have interior emergency response centers. Right. Are you prepared to pursue that?
Absolutely, and we actually, a group of us talked about it last summer during wildfire season, and it just makes sense. It makes sense that Prince George has an allocation of an emergency center, whether that be for wildfires, probably not earthquakes, but you never know. But just an emergency center here, and there's some ideal locations. But it would take into consideration, Cheryl, having the airport involved, because I envision the center as being all-inclusive. So water bombers would have an opportunity to stage here. Firefighters would have an opportunity to stage here. Ministry of Forests currently has quite an operation here in Prince George, and that's important to this center. But whatever the emergency is, because of our geographical location, we could assist in those emergencies very, very quick. To me, much quicker than what they could out of Vancouver or on the island.
You probably took a bit of flack in the last campaign over what most people call pay raises. Not only within council, council giving themselves a pay raise, but also senior staff. What's your response to that?
Well, so we had a remuneration committee that was put together, and they brought recommendations back to council. And it's always difficult when you're sitting around this room and you're deliberating your own wage increase. But I thought the remuneration committee made a very strong case. They had strong comparables for why they made those recommendations. So those were passed. So our pay structure is a complicated structure, as with any large corporation. We're no different than, you know, within the public or private sector. And so our employees at that senior level come in at a certain pay raise or a pay rate, and then from there they work through various bands of incremental pay increases until they reach the top of their pay scale. And that happens in many organizations. Is it needed to be better explained? Because obviously that has become really a topic of conversation. We provide what we call a SOFI report, which itemizes all of our expenditures as a city, but it also includes our staff. Every one of our staff members are listed in there. So I think what's happened is that we just need to better explain that.
We have 2 newbies on council, but all of the incumbents have been returned. Is that indicative of a desire for the status quo moving forward over the next 4 years, or are you planning to maintain the status quo, or are you going to try and switch things up a little bit over the next 4 years?
Well, first of all, I think it was indicative of sort of the comfort level within the community. And I think it was also indicative by the number of people who ran. Normally we would have seen 24 people run for council, 2, maybe 3 run for the mayor's position. In this case, we had 13 or 14 people run for council. So I think there were a couple things that really sent a message that, you know, the community was fairly comfortable with those of us that were incumbents. And are we going to shake it up? You know, I don't like to sit idle. And there's a lot of things that I have swirling around that I'd like to see us do as a city, and we're going to keep moving forward. We're not going to sit idle.
You opened the door. What's swirling around in there?
Well, you know what's swirling around is I want to see us continue to develop the city from a residential, seniors housing, commercial. Let's talk about business for a moment. We've got a number of things on the plate. We are working diligently with 2 or 3 potential data centers that want to locate to Prince George. That is a big, big thing for me. It's something that I think you take a look at other communities that are doing well, and data centers really provide an impetus for growth. So I'm excited about that. We're trying to attract service industry businesses to Prince George that will service the resource sector. So you talk about LNG in the forest sector and the mining sector. Those are important pieces. It's not always the company that comes to Prince George and employs 100 or 120 people, Cheryl. If you can get businesses that come into town and employ 15 or 20 or 25 people, that's really strong and stable backbone of a community. I'm really keen on the riverfront. I take a look at a community like Kamloops or Kelowna, but particularly Kamloops, because they have much the same geographical layout. They have the river, they had a lot of heavy industrial and commercial along the river, but they've still managed to maintain that, but at least change the idea of the riverfront and use it more for you know, trails, even some development, some housing development along the river. Constant growth is good and healthy. Drastic growth, as we said earlier, starts to impact the services that you provide, but I think we're doing well. So, you know, and who knows, you talk about it today, but 6 months down the road, something else could come along that we're excited about, and we see some real future, and we want to draw them to Prince George. And Whittick Park should be open in the spring.
Yeah.
There's a dozen buildings on the district energy, and it runs from Lakeland under the CN rail lines and into our main transmission station on the corner of George and 2nd. So what we're looking at doing is tying it into the new pool. And you know, whenever new businesses come on stream, so we've got Crossroads, we had a conversation with them, but it just wasn't going to work out for them. Park House condos, well, we're having conversations with them about the opportunities there. But it could be utilized a lot more, and it's a great, you know, it's a system that we need to talk more about.
Yeah.
There's not
Yeah,
many
we really got to
cities that
toot our own
have
horn.
it. Absolutely.
Right? You know?
Absolutely.
Lots of talk earlier about this world. This is a groundbreaking facility. This is like
Yeah.
an international marvel.
Yep. And what's taking place here is something that UNBC just wants to promote all around the world, quite honestly. And then we're doing the same thing through our Economic Development Office. If you're somebody interested in wood innovation, what better place to come to than Prince George?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you're talking about tech, right?
Absolutely.
That's back to that, that whole science and technology kind of stuff, right?
And it goes along with the bioenergy conferences that we've had here. And that bioenergy conference really at the end of the day is one of the best that there is. And we get people from all around the world that come here to that. And that really shows in part, Cheryl, the diversification of the forest industry.
The last budget, the end run was a 1.5% tax hike. We have a couple of big projects, some big expenses coming on the books. What do you say to the taxpayers? Because 1.5 is probably not a reality next go round.
So when we were going through the referendum on those two projects, the pool and the fire hall, $50 million total, we talked about the impact on taxes based on $100,000 of value in your home. You know, I would only be guessing, and I'm not prepared to do that, as to what any kind of potential tax increase there would be. We're going to dive into that at the end of January during the budget deliberations. But I think we're set up pretty well in various operational categories with reserves in place. So we'll see what happens. I was asked the other day what it means, and I said, you know, so UNBC turned 25 years, and look what it means to the city, and this is 25 years. Anything, you know, you hit that 25-year mark, that's a huge accomplishment.
Are we outgrowing this facility?
I think there are some events that we can't go after because we're not big enough. We don't have enough convention space, and so that's part of it. That's, I think, why there's some idea. Take a look at what we can add to this so that we can go after these larger events. So even with this, the Marriott, the Coast, and the Ramada, these larger conventions that, you know, will bring in hundreds and hundreds and, you know, a couple thousand people, we can't do it. Just don't have the capacity. Room capacity is getting much better, but space, convention space, just isn't there.
We used to be a community that leaned heavily on forestry. When the pulp mill shut down, the place shut down. We now have more government services. We've diversified. Is the tech sector the one area that we have yet to fulfill? One sector that we need to work to attract here, or are there others?
No, I think that specifically, that tech sector is a big piece for us, and they look at a community from a geographical perspective. They look at us from a temperature perspective. They look at us from broadband, redundancy opportunities. So there's a tremendous amount of things that they look at, but I think that that's a sector that I'm very interested in, and I know the rest of council are as well. We're the largest city in the northern part of the province, and we have a responsibility. And I think we've really turned the corner, and we've worked hard in becoming that regional community that's there to help others. And we've shown that through the wildfire evacuation over the last year. But it's important for me, for other communities, to know that we're there to help out. And we have sort of that big brother approach to help people, and that's important for me.
Message to the viewers.
Well, obviously, on behalf of council, I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday season, and really hope that 2019 is healthy and prosperous for everyone. And I think from a city operational piece, from a council operational piece, we're going to continue to deal with the issues that are there. As I said, we have social issues, we have all of the issues that we've talked about in this interview. This council is absolutely committed to working on each and every one of those issues, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. There are things that we need to deal with as a council. This will be a very active and involved council throughout the community. You're going to see us all around the community at many events, and you can take that opportunity to talk to us. I think input is a big thing for us. We're going to reinstate the Talktober events. We took a leave in 2018 because of the election and used it more for the referendum, but we're going to get back to that. Those Talktober events were really, really special for us give us an opportunity to meet face to face with folks in neighborhoods around the city. They had an opportunity too, Cheryl, to meet with staff, which was really important. You know, it's easy for us to get out into the community when we're shopping and doing whatever, for you to come and talk to us. And you know, we sit and we make some major decisions, particularly around the budget, and then it's staff's responsibility, and they go out and they make sure that the operation of the city continues to go day by day. So to have the opportunity to meet with somebody and talk about parks and trails, talk about infrastructure in a particular neighborhood, to talk about programs that are delivered through our leisure services, like, you know, so for swimming and skating, it's a great opportunity. So.
Give me an example of where a Talktober suggestion bore fruit.
Lights on Highway 97 North up around the Hart Mall. You know, that was a pretty dangerous area, so we partnered with the Ministry of Transportation, and the lights are there now. There's some trail systems, so for example, River Park, next to the bridge on Foothills. That was a conversation that came up with a few people at a Talktober event. So there it is today. We'll probably open that up sometime in the spring of 2019.
Looking at 2019, do you have a pet project? You were there when they were starting to tear down the old RCMP detachment, and you look like a kid in a candy store, to be honest. Yeah. So is there any particular project that you're really looking forward to seeing get underway next year?
Well, the pool and the fire hall are really exciting projects for us. But we've known those were going to be in the works for a long time. And I think for me, and I go back to, and I don't mean to just pick one, because there are a number of them, Cheryl, but for me it's the seniors housing piece that I get so excited about, to be able to provide that to residents in the Hart area. That's really one of the keys for me.
What are you looking forward to in the next 4 years?
I think much the same as we came out of the last 4. This is an exciting job. And as you know, you guys were with me this morning at 7:30 at CNC. That's kind of when my day starts, doesn't end till late at night. And I just want to continue that. I want to continue that positive atmosphere in our community, and I think it's really taken off. And I know all of council are positive about things that are going on in our city. Are there things that we need to fix? Absolutely. Are there issues from day to day? Absolutely. It's not always a road paved in gold. There's bumps along the way, and there's things that we need to deal with. But it's about turning the attitude and being so positive about what's happening. And I think once you start to perpetuate that within the community, it gets outside. It flourishes outside of Prince George.
Thank you for joining us for the past hour for a bit of a peek into the average day for the mayor of our fine community, along with a review of the past year and a look into the future, one the mayor sees as very bright.